and welcome to a teaching tip from CAFE, the Center for the Advancement of Food Service Education. This is another of Mayo's Consulting Clinic skills, an idea to help you become a better teacher. You are a good teacher. You do the best you can at teaching. This is just a way to rethink something or to give you a new angle on it. But remember, as you think about new ways of teaching, that our students will only respect our knowledge and our skill and our caring if we show them that we respect them as people and we respect their knowledge and their skills as well. Today's topic is, how do we foster discussion among students? And one of the frustrating things for me as a teacher when I started many years ago is I would give a reading assignment or a video assignment, and I'd come to class and I'd ask the students, well, what do you think of it? And you get blank stares. And you just wait for a response, and you wait for a response, and it's that eternity. And part of the reason isn't that they didn't want to or hadn't read the stuff and they'd like to talk about it, but they don't know where to go with the discussion. And one of the things we can do is to ask better questions. One of the foolish questions is, what did you think of what you read? Because they don't know if you're asking about the form, the layout, the design, the content, the structure, etc. So we need to be more specific in our questions. So ask, what are the key ideas here? How do those ideas differ from what you learned in other situations? What two things would you disagree with in what you read, and why would you disagree with them? What would you like to change if you could rewrite part of this? Or what in that video contradicts what you've done in other kitchens? What in that video contradicts the way you've learned to hold a knife, or the way you've learned to wait on people in a dining room situation? So we need to think about specific questions. The great idea about specific questions like the what do you disagree with, what's most important, what's critical, is that you can ask that same question of several students. And if no one responds, call on them by name, and you will find that they will respond. The more specific questions, the better. A second strategy to foster discussion is to help them build the skills of talking to each other, and that is by having them talk to each other, not to you. Now, it's hard for some of us who like to be traffic cops and have the student talk to us, and then we respond to what the student says, and then the next student talks to us, and we respond to that student. If you can practice not talking in response to what they say, and use something like a ball, and you toss it to a student for the question, and then ask them to toss it to someone else, and that person answers the question. All of a sudden, they start to talk to each other. They notice each other. And one of the ways that I've done to get out of that traffic cop is to walk away from the center of the room and to the side, and as a result of that, they can't see you. So they will look at each other, even if they have to turn around. And I'll stand and do a lecture from the back of the room, so they have to turn and crane in their seats, and they're really uncomfortable, but all of a sudden they realize there's other students in the room, and they talk to those students. A third strategy is to always ask them to address each other by name. Now, for some of our students in small classes and cooking classes, they know everyone's name, but sometimes they don't, or sometimes they forget. And getting them to treat each other with that kind of common decency of knowing their name and using their name correctly. So if it is an unusual name, like Alexandra, or Alicia, or Elisa, or Elisa, or Alicia, all of those are different names. Use those names appropriately, correctly, and get students to use those names appropriately and correctly. It makes a big difference in those students feeling comfortable talking. And another strategy is to have them comment on what students say. So if students say stuff and no one says anything, it's a little bit like throwing a penny down a well and you never hear the sound of the splash in the water. And we've all been in situations and committees where you make a suggestion and everyone goes, and it doesn't help because you don't know if they agreed with you, disagreed with you, think you're terrible, think you're smart, or just don't know what to do with it. So encourage students to comment on each other. So encourage students to say yes, or good idea, or bad idea, or what do you mean, or etc. And throw the ball, and they have to say something about that situation. All of those are ways to get them used to talking in a large group. And sometimes they're not used to it because a lot of teachers like to lecture. In fact, what we know is that about 6% of the time in a classroom situation is actual student participation. 6%. That means 91% of the airtime we take up with our instructions, with our advice, with our guidance, with our information, all of which is wonderful, but if they've only had normally 6% of the time, they're out of practice about how to talk in a class. And we do know they know how to talk to each other, we just need to get it to happen in a class. Some of these ideas will give you suggestions. I encourage you to use them, and you know other things. Watch other teachers, see what they do. And for more information about making small groups work, I encourage you to look at the teaching tips and see some ideas about working with small groups. Other information is on the website, www.cafemeetingplace.com. I encourage you to enjoy it and to think of new ways to teach, because teaching is really fun. It's challenging, it's invigorating, it's exciting, and we can all do a better job. Thank you for coming.